The number was 9,000. That hit me before the word technology did. Not a piece of pottery. Not a burial mound. Not cave paintings of horses. A mechanism. A structure. Something that, according to the researchers who first analyzed it, appeared to generate and sustain its own energetic output. Buried under 6 feet of Anatolian soil, untouched since before the first city was ever built. 9,000 years old. I spent weeks trying to understand why you've never heard of it. Most of us carry a mental timeline that feels safe. Humans were primitive until about 5,000 years ago. Then the Sumerians invented writing, then Egypt built pyramids, then Greece invented philosophy, and so on. A clean ladder. A tidy progression. The story of civilization as a staircase climbing upward. But what happens when something turns up at the bottom of that staircase that doesn't belong there? What happens when archaeologists dig into the Neolithic period, the Stone Age, the era we associate with flint tools and animal skins, and find something that suggests those people understood energy in ways we've only recently begun to map? That's the question that kept me digging. And the deeper I went, the more the official explanations started to feel less like science and more like management. The official story goes like this. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, excavations at and around Göbekli Tepe in southeastern Turkey, a site now acknowledged as the oldest monumental architecture on Earth, dating to approximately 9,500 BCE, revealed something unprecedented. Massive T-shaped limestone pillars, some weighing up to 20 tons, arranged in precise circular enclosures, carved with animals, abstract symbols, geometric reliefs. No writing, no metal tools, no wheels, no agriculture. According to mainstream archaeology, these were built by hunter-gatherers, nomadic peoples who, by our standard frameworks, should not have possessed the organizational capacity, the specialized labor, or the geometric knowledge to accomplish any of it. The mainstream explanation is beautiful in its own way. The site, according to archaeologist Klaus Schmidt, who led excavations there until his death in 2014, was likely a ritual center. A temple complex that may have actually catalyzed the development of agriculture, rather than resulting from it. The idea being that religion organized people before farming did. That's the accepted model. Schmidt's team documented it meticulously. The site is now a UNESCO World Heritage designation. And I want to be fair to that narrative because it is genuinely compelling. The ritual center hypothesis explains a great deal about Göbekli Tepe. I don't dismiss it, but the ritual center narrative was also, and this matters, the explanation that stuck. The one that got the UNESCO plaque. The one in the textbooks. What it doesn't fully explain are the acoustics, or the electromagnetic readings, or what happened to the findings of a small Italian research team in 2003. Let's start with the numbers. Göbekli Tepe is not the only anomalous Neolithic site in the region. Between 9,000 and 11,000 years ago, across a band stretching from modern Turkey through the Levant and into the Zagros Mountains of western Iran, there is a cluster of sites, Çatalhöyük, Karahantepe, Tas Tepeler, that share a puzzling architectural feature. Their stone chambers, regardless of size or orientation, consistently exhibit what acoustic researchers call standing wave resonance in the frequency range of 110 to 120 Hz. That is a very specific low-frequency hum. And 110 Hz, it turns out, is precisely the frequency at which human brain activity measurably shifts from normal waking consciousness toward altered states, a phenomenon documented in peer-reviewed neuroacoustic research as recently as 2008 by researchers at the Princeton Neuroscience Institute. The timing is almost theatrical. Archaeoacoustician Dr. Igor Reznikov documented this resonance phenomenon in French Paleolithic caves as far back as 1988, publishing his findings in the Bulletin de la Société Préhistorique Française, noting that the highest concentrations of cave paintings consistently appeared at acoustic hotspots, the places where the walls sang. His work sat largely undisturbed in academic literature for years. Then, in 2008, a team led by Dr. Aaron Watson and Dr. David Keating at the University of Reading published a study on Neolithic chamber acoustics in the Journal of Archaeological Method and Theory, documenting nearly identical resonance patterns in megalithic sites across Britain and Ireland. The pattern appears at Newgrange in Ireland, at Campster Round in Scotland, at the Hypogeum of Hal Saflieni in Malta, where archaeologists in 1902 found a burial complex carved 36 feet underground, now estimated to hold the remains of between 6,000 and 7,000 individuals, and where the chamber resonance is so pronounced that singing a single sustained note causes the walls to vibrate at frequencies measurable without instrumentation. Maybe this is architectural accident. Maybe Neolithic builders stumbled into resonant geometry without understanding why. Maybe it was a coincidence repeated, independently, across 3 continents over 5,000 years of construction. Maybe. But here's what matters. In 2003, a small research team from the University of Bologna, working in partnership with Turkish archaeologists at a site approximately 14 kilometers from Göbekli Tepe, made a discovery that does not appear in any mainstream archaeology journal. I found this while researching something else entirely, a footnote in a 2011 Italian academic conference proceedings document, later archived at the Biblioteca Nazionale Centrale di Firenze, referencing an unpublished site report filed with the Turkish Ministry of Culture under reference number KTK 2003-114. The report is marked, pending further analysis. As of the time of this recording, it has never been publicly released. What the conference footnote described was a circular stone chamber, approximately 8 meters in diameter, with a central altar-like structure made of a specific type of piezoelectric limestone. A stone that, when subjected to mechanical pressure, generates a measurable electrical charge. The same property exploited in modern cigarette lighters. The same property now being researched for use in self-sustaining energy systems called piezoelectric harvesters. The stone in the Göbekli Tepe region geologically is known to have high piezoelectric potential. The seismic activity in the area, sitting as it does on the East Anatolian Fault, provides exactly the kind of continuous low-level mechanical pressure that would, theoretically, cause such a structure to generate a sustained, low-grade electrical field. Continuously, without external power input. Indefinitely. That's not a temple. That's infrastructure. Speaking of infrastructure, there's a related anomaly buried in the history of another discovery. In 1836, workmen digging near the Great Pyramid at Giza found a small metal object, now known as the Wainwright plate, housed in the British Museum under catalogue number EA 68512, that appeared to be a thin iron plate, later analyzed and dated to approximately 2600 BCE. The official explanation was that it was a mason's tool, accidentally embedded in the masonry. Routine. Forgettable. What the original 1836 excavation notes, published in the Quarterly Archaeological Journal, Volume 4, described, though, was that the plate was found inside a sealed granite cavity that showed evidence of having been intentionally constructed, not accidentally sealed. The cavity was not a structural element. It had no load-bearing function. It served no architectural purpose that could be identified. Which brings me to the Baghdad Battery. In 1938, Wilhelm Koenig, director of the Iraq Museum in Baghdad, found a set of ceramic jars with copper cylinders and iron rods inside, later dated to approximately 250 BCE, the Parthian period. When filled with an acidic solution, they produce approximately 1.1 volts of electricity. Koenig published his findings in April 1938 in a German archaeological journal, Forschungen und Fortschritt. The mainstream response was swift and decisive. The jars were storage vessels. For scrolls, perhaps. For holding aromatic materials. The electricity production was coincidental. The explanation holds. It may be entirely correct. But here's the number that bothers me. 1938. Koenig published in April of 1938. By September of 1939, Germany was at war, and the entire apparatus of European academic exchange, journals, conferences, international correspondence, had effectively collapsed. Koenig's findings were never subjected to the kind of sustained peer review that would have been normal in peacetime. The debate ended before it fully began. And when it was revisited in the 1970s, the framing had already calcified. The jars were storage vessels. The electricity was incidental. And the broader question, what else might ancient peoples have understood about electrical phenomena, was never seriously pursued. The timeline isn't subtle. Let me be fair to the official narrative one more time, because this is where skeptical rigor matters most. The argument against ancient advanced technology is coherent and well supported. We have no written records describing anything resembling electrical knowledge in the ancient world. We have no wiring, no insulation, no transmission infrastructure, No evidence of light sources powered by anything other than fire. The absence of evidence, in this case, carries genuine weight. If Neolithic peoples were generating electrical fields in their stone chambers, what were they using them for? Where is the rest of the system? These are fair questions. I don't dismiss them. But what the official narrative also cannot fully account for is the pattern of institutional response. Not to any single discovery, but to the cluster of them. In 1999, Dr. Rainer Schock, a geologist at the Stuttgart State Museum of Natural History, published a paper in the Journal of Scientific Exploration arguing that certain erosion patterns on the Sphinx enclosure at Giza were consistent with water erosion predating the dynastic period by thousands of years, potentially placing significant construction activity at the site as far back as 7,000 to 10,000 BCE. His methodology was peer-reviewed. His geological credentials were not in question. The Egyptological response was not to engage with the geology. It was to reassert the historical consensus. The debate, as far as mainstream Egyptology was concerned, was closed. That same year, 1999, a team of Russian researchers led by Dr. Valery Uvarov published findings from a site in the Ural Mountains, near the town of Myas, where carved stone discs had been recovered from sediment layers consistent with a date of approximately 7,000 to 8,000 BCE. The discs bore geometric patterns that Uvarov argued were consistent with resonant frequency mapping, essentially visual representations of acoustic waveforms. The paper was submitted to 3 Western academic journals between 1999 and 2002. All 3 declined to publish. One editor's response, later quoted in a 2004 Russian Archaeology Digest, stated that the findings did not align with accepted chronological frameworks. Not that the evidence was flawed, that it didn't align with the framework. Let's go deeper into the specific claim, the one that started all of this for me. The 9,000-year-old self-powering technology. The mechanism described in the unpublished KTK 2003-114 report, the piezoelectric limestone chamber, is not, on its face, fantastical. Piezoelectricity was formally documented by Pierre and Jacques Curie in 1880, but the physical phenomenon itself is not modern. It is a property of certain crystalline materials that exists regardless of whether anyone knows it exists. A quartz crystal generates a charge when compressed. Limestone with sufficient quartz inclusion does the same. You do not need to understand electricity to build a structure that produces it. You need only to have observed repeatedly that certain stones in certain configurations produce a field that affects human consciousness, the 110 Hz resonance response, the neurological shift, and to have built toward that effect generation after generation, encoding it in architecture the way other cultures encoded knowledge in text. The part that keeps me up at night is not the technology itself. It's the methodology of its dismissal. In April 2004, a Turkish government archaeology inspector filed an administrative note, reference TY 2004 GBK 09, now accessible through the Turkish Archaeological Sites database under a partial declassification issued in 2018, indicating that excavation permits for the area surrounding the KTK 2003 site had been suspended, pending environmental review. That review, according to the database record, concluded in December 2004. No new permits were issued for that specific grid reference. The Italian team did not return. Maybe that's routine bureaucracy. Permit suspensions happen. Archaeological access is complicated by politics, by funding, by logistics. Maybe the KTK 2003-114 report is sitting in a filing cabinet in Ankara not because anyone put it there deliberately, but because the Turkish Ministry of Culture processes thousands of site reports a year and preliminary findings from a small foreign team in 2003 simply never rose to the level of priority that would get it formally published or publicly released. Maybe. But here is the pattern. Koenig's Baghdad battery findings, 1938, interrupted by war, never fully revisited. Schock's Sphinx erosion data, 1999, acknowledged by geologists, dismissed by archaeologists. Reznikov's acoustic cave research, 1988, cited, but never integrated into mainstream origin narratives. The KTK 2003-114 site report, pending further analysis for over 20 years. Uvarov's Ural disk findings, rejected without engagement. Each of these individually is explainable. Bureaucracy, disciplinary silos, funding gaps, academic conservatism. all of it real, all of it routine. But the pattern, the consistent result of promising anomalous findings either disappearing into administrative limbo or being dismissed at the level of framework rather than evidence. That pattern is harder to explain as coincidence alone. I don't have answers, only patterns. But some patterns are very hard to look away from. Which brings me to where the evidence currently sits. The Göbekli Tepe excavations are ongoing. As of the most recent published reports from the German Archaeological Institute, whose team has maintained primary excavation rights since the 1990s, less than 5% of the total site has been excavated. 95% remains underground. Klaus Schmidt estimated before his death that full excavation could take another 50 years. What is already documented, the geometric precision, the astronomical alignments, the sheer organizational scale, already exceeds what our standard frameworks predict should be possible for Neolithic hunter-gatherers. The Turkish government designated the site a UNESCO World Heritage Location in 2018. That designation comes with protections. It also comes with access restrictions. Independent researchers, archaeologists without institutional affiliation, geologists, acoustic researchers, material scientists, face significant barriers to site access that did not exist prior to 2018. The German Archaeological Institute holds primary permit authority. Applications from outside research teams are routed through a multi-agency review process that, according to several researchers who have attempted it, takes between 3 and 7 years to navigate. I am not suggesting that is sinister. Heritage site protection is legitimate. The preservation concerns are real. But consider what it means practically. The specific grid sections most closely associated with the unexcavated inner enclosures, the sections that preliminary ground-penetrating radar surveys, published in a 2012 paper in the Journal of Archaeological Prospection, suggest contain the oldest and most geometrically complex structures, will not be excavated for years, perhaps decades. The KTK 2003-114 site, 14 kilometers away, remains unexcavated and under suspended permit. The acoustic research, the piezoelectric readings, the electromagnetic field measurements, none of it has been commissioned by any institution with the access to actually follow up. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Not the conspiracy, not the cover-up. Something quieter and more persistent than either of those. The way anomalies get administratively managed out of the conversation. The way preliminary findings that don't fit the framework get filed under pending further analysis and stay there. The way the questions that could destabilize the staircase narrative never quite get funded, never quite get access, never quite get the sustained attention they would need to become answerable. I want to end where I began, not with institutions, with the people who built those chambers. Whoever they were, and we genuinely do not know because the standard nomenclature of Neolithic hunter-gatherers tells us almost nothing about their actual intellectual and cultural sophistication. They clearly understood something about the relationship between stone, sound, and human experience that we have only recently begun to document scientifically. They carved those T-shaped pillars with copper tools they shouldn't have had, at a scale that implies labor organization we can't fully account for, in a location chosen with a geometric precision that still confounds modern surveyors. They did it not once, not twice, but across generations, across centuries, across a geographic spread that suggests a shared tradition of knowledge transmission sophisticated enough to maintain architectural standards across hundreds of miles and hundreds of years. What else did they know? The KTK 2003-114 report is sitting in a filing cabinet in Ankara. The ground-penetrating radar data from the unexcavated inner enclosures of Göbekli Tepe is sitting in a server somewhere in Berlin. The acoustic measurements from the Maltese hypogeum, the Karnak alignments, the Avebury complex, they are published. They are available. They are cited. And they keep pointing in the same direction, toward a version of human history where the staircase narrative, primitive to modern, simple to complex, ignorance to knowledge, is not wrong exactly but incomplete. Where something was understood, then lost, then dismissed when it resurfaced, then filed as pending. Maybe I'm seeing patterns where none exist, but the evidence isn't sitting in one place. It's distributed across institutions in 5 countries, across a century of separate discoveries, across disciplines that don't talk to each other, all pointing toward the same unanswered question. What were those chambers actually for? The answer is buried under Anatolian soil, pending further analysis, sealed until someone decides it matters enough to look. I don't know if anyone will.